Hello. All right. So, I am by myself today. Lisa is traveling. She is somewhere in Yellowstone and she's tried to pop in a couple of times, but it hasn't been successful. So we might see her pop in just a little bit, but she might not be able to because you never know how service is going to be. So hopefully, um, we'll be able to get through this. It feels really weird not to have my partner in crime over here. So, um, we'll give everybody just a couple more minutes to get in here, and then we'll get started and we'll start talking about needles. Hi guys, hopefully you can hear me okay. Let's see. It's pretty sunny out and it's a little cold. Everybody around here is freezing, so we have the heat turned on, and then they said it's going to be nice and warm again on this weekend. So we'll be changing. We won't be drinking our pumpkin spice. Do you like pumpkin spice? I don't really do pumpkin spice. All right. Good. Everybody can hear me okay. So, let's see. We're going to start talking about needles in just a minute. What have you guys been sewing? Anything fun? Since Lisa's not here, she already knows this. So I told Lisa that I would make her a tote bag because she's a big Vera Bradley fan. And Disney has a new Vera Bradley like duffel bag, and it's really cute, but the fabrics are not really her cup of tea. So I volunteered to make her a duffel bag for her birthday, which is not this Saturday, but next Saturday, in case you wanted to know that. And so I've been stitching up a whole bunch of Mickey ears and Mickey heads to make for this basket or this duffel bag. So that's what I've been stitching up when I haven't been working. What have you guys been doing? Anything fun? You're super quiet. It's so weird to not have anybody to look at and talk to. All right. We have a bunch of people on now, so that is great. So I'm going to just start rambling and talking about needles, and I am by myself, so I apologize if I talk too fast. I will try not to. Hi, Roxanne and Shirley and Mary and Jane and everybody. Still feels really weird to just be over here by myself. All right, this makes it better. So, stitching glow-in-the-dark skeletons, and Shirley's been embroidering trees on napkins. That sounds like lots of fun. I haven't embroidered in a long time. Besides what I've been doing here, I've been just doing more sewing. Hi, Dee, long time no see. Dee stopped in and gave me some really cool fabric today that looks like threads for a project. So I'm super excited about that. You guys sometimes find the coolest fabrics that I don't see, so that was fun. Okay, so let's talk about needles. So if you guys have questions about needles, hi, Lisa's mom. Hi, Miss Mary, how are you? If you guys have questions about needles while I'm talking, just go ahead and plop those up there, and I will circle back around and come back and answer all those. So needles. When we talk about needles, we have to talk about kind of fabrics and threads, so it kind of all goes together. You can't really have one without the other. So usually when people ask me about what type of needle, I always feel like I'm giving them the third degree because I'm like, well, what kind of fabric are you using? What kind of thread are you using? Oh, Connie's been making a sweet as pie. Oh, that is a really cute one. It's perfect time for that. So I'm not trying to give you the third degree when I'm asking all of those questions. I'm just asking those questions so that I can help get to the right needle. So, needles. There's so many different things about the needles. A lot of the things when we talk about this, they're not important at all. Do you really need to know about the blade or that the needle has a shoulder or that the top of it is called the butt. No, you do not. You don't need to know any of those things. Oh, I see Lisa popping in at the bottom. I think she's trying. I don't hear anything yet, but I see her.
It's kicking me out.
Oh, she's typing. Let's see.
I'm trying.
Let's get her in here. There we go. Hi, Lisa. I can't hear anything, but I can see you. All right, so back to the needles. So many things about needles that you don't necessarily need to know, but these are parts of the needles that we talk about sometimes. And this little tutorial that I have up on the screen here just kind of tells you what all of the different pieces and parts are about. Basically, what you really need to know is that on a home sewing machine, we have a flat back needle, and on commercial sewing machines, the needles are round. So as long as we get you the right type of needle for your machine, we can usually figure out the rest of it. But that's really the only thing that you need to know about the difference between a home sewing needle and a commercial one is that a home sewing one has a flat back, which is how your needle goes into the machine. So we have different sizes, we have different types, we have blades, we have grooves, we have the eye, we have the point, and we have the tip. So the things that change a lot on the machine are the eye, the tip, the point, and the groove. And those will vary depending on A, the size of the needle that we have, and B, the type.
Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
I can hear you a little bit. All right, so
Hey,
those are the things. There you are. Those are the things that we're going to talk about changing with our different needles is those few parts there. So what changes even on the same size needle? So the picture that I have up there, the top needle is a universal needle, and the bottom one is a top stitch needle. So the top stitch needle, the eye is almost twice as large as the universal needle, but the diameter of the needles are exactly the same. So depending on the style needle that you choose will depend upon how wide or how large the opening is that your thread goes through. So not all of them are this drastically different. A lot of size 80 needles, the opening of the eye will be very similar. This one is just a good example because you can see it with like a clear eye that the difference is substantial. Now, the reason a top stitch needle has a larger eye is because a lot of times when we top stitch, we are generally using something that is a slightly larger diameter thread. So that's why top stitch needles always have a slightly larger opening. That is also why sometimes we say if you are struggling with a certain type of needle to thread combination, but you don't want the whole needle to get bigger. Oh, I hear you again.
I'm trying.
So if we put a slightly larger thread through the top stitch needle, sometimes you'll get less resistance. So that's why we reference top stitch needles often.
Oh, this is entertaining on my end.
You're a little bouncy.
Yeah, road's a little bumpy.
Yeah.
Trying to hold it still, but
it's like impossible.
Yeah, a little bit.
So where are you?
We just left through the north entrance of Yellowstone. We're in Montana, and we're in the middle of nowhere, so there's not a whole lot of service out here. So,
Well,
but
it's
Yellowstone was
substantially
gorgeous.
better now.
Well, fingers crossed. So,
Yeah. Uh, all right. So when we tell you to pick the thread and then pick the needle, we're doing that because of the thickness of the thread and basically how big it is. So this is a little guide here that is kind of like a generalized rule. It's not always perfect, and the reason that it's not always perfect is because for some strange reason, the industry has decided that threads don't need to be held to like a universal standard. So sometimes you get a thread from one company that says it's 50 weight, and then you get a 50 weight thread from another company, and you're like, one of these things is not like the others. And so that's why there's kind of a guesstimate in there. And that's why we don't say, oh, if you have 50 weight, always use a size 75. And that's why it says, like, use a 75 to a 90. Because depending on which version of 50 weight thread you have will depend upon which needle will work best for your thread. Again, if you have very fine fabric, you aren't going to want to use a size 90 needle, which means you need to use slightly thinner thread. So it's kind of like a conundrum that you can get yourself into. I have this thread, I have these needles, and I have this fabric. Can I make it work? So sometimes you have to start, and even though you don't have the right combination, sometimes it works. Sometimes you
Right.
call us and you're like, it didn't work.
what do
And
I
we're
do
like,
now?
okay, yeah, what do I do now? Let's try to fix it. But sometimes it does work. So even though, like, in the very best case scenario, you try to match your thread and your needle to your fabric, sometimes we realize that that doesn't happen, and you just got to throw all of it, just out of the door and to just try to figure out something else. So these are always loosey-goosey because you can definitely change it, but it's just a good starting point. So just someplace to kind of guesstimate.
Right.
Okay. Whoa, let's go back one more here. So what happens if I get the right needle, the right thread, and I think I have the perfect stabilizer, and my thread is just skipping stitches, it's shredding, or it's breaking? So is it my needle? Is it my machine? Is it my thread? It's one of those things where it's really hard to, like, there's not a 100% right answer. Lisa and I have come across numerous needles right out of the package that are just
Brand
bad.
new.
Yeah.
One whole package that had no eyes.
Yes. They just covered them.
Yep, that
And
was an interesting day.
it was. And do you we tried more than one out of that package before we realized
Right,
there
and
was
it was
no
like,
hole.
wait a second, there's no eye in this. No wonder the threader's not working. And I looked at the pack and I was like, there's no eyes in a single one of these.
Yes.
It was absolutely insane. You know, they're made in mass, so it makes sense when you think about it that they're not all going to be perfect, but you don't expect 5 in a row to not have an eye. That was different.
Someone probably was saving all of those.
We're gonna really mess with this person. Let's put them all in one pack. But yeah,
Right?
yeah, that
So,
was an interesting day.
yeah. So the first thing we always tell you to do is simply just try another needle. You don't have to throw the one out that you think it might still be good. You can just kind of set it aside and you can try another needle. If everything is exactly the same, you could assume that maybe it's not the needle. That would be like my first assumption. Unless of course then you look at it and you realize that it's just bad. Like it feels bad, or you've got a tip broken or something like that. But assuming that it looks and feels okay, the first thing that I would do is, okay, it's probably not my needle. What else do we have going on? Are you using sticky stabilizer? This happens a lot. The
Yeah.
stabilizer starts to get like gummy on the needle,
Right.
and then everything sticks to the needle, and then everything starts to shred, and the stitches start to skip, or the thread breaks. And you get like an accumulation of dust and stuff, and you can kind of see it, almost like a lint ball attached to your needle.
Right. Yep.
And then again, not necessarily, you don't have to change your needle, but we definitely need to clean the needle at this point. So a little bit of alcohol pad, like rubbing alcohol. You can take a shot at this point. You might need one, but don't drink the rubbing alcohol.
Don't do that.
But use that on your needle, and that'll give you a little bit of, it'll take some of the stickiness off of there, and then you can try it again and see if that alleviates the issue. The other thing that happens is suddenly you're having all of these troubles after you broke a needle. So is the needle stuck someplace? Is it stuck in your bobbin case? Do you have a hole in your bobbin case now? Did you take your machine apart and put it back together wrong? We talked about that last week.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah. And then I had 2 people in this week who did that. So
well, it's super common, like we said. Absolutely.
Yeah, it definitely happens all the time. But it could be that, you know, you broke your needle and now you've got a hole in your bobbin case, and that'll again create some weird, unique circumstances where sometimes you think that it's a needle issue when really it isn't necessarily related to this particular needle. It was related to another needle.
There we go. That's better.
Yeah.
That's better.
A little
Let's
bit
do that. There we go.
Oh, look, it's nice out. You see the mountains?
It's beautiful. That's better
Yes.
than a weird angle of my face.
Let's see. Okay. So if it's not a needle broke, it's not a bobbin case. Sometimes, we got, I think she must have hit an area. The video froze. So sometimes if you have a brother or a baby lock, you have a number 6 guide. So sometimes the number 6 guide gets a little bit skewed from putting our needles in and out. And, oh, there she is. She's back. And this will also cause your machine to have some skip stitches and some shredding of the thread and some thread breakage. The easiest way to know if it is your number 6 guide is once you have your machine threaded, if you pop the thread back out of your number 6 guide and you do a little bit of stitching, then you will find that it stops doing that. And if it completely stops doing that, then we know that we have a number 6 guide issue, and it's time to get that replaced. Now, it's number 6 on our brother and our baby lock machines, but it might not be the number 6 guide on your machine, but it will be the area that holds the thread close to the needle, and that can get a little wonky on lots of different brands, so not just ours. But if it tends to be kind of breaking or shredding in that area, if you pop it out of that and then it stops, then we know kind of that that's one of those places where it's just going to be an issue for you, and then you should have that replaced.
Yeah. And there are sometimes things we can help you with getting that functional until you can get it in to be replaced.
Yes.
So call us if you know that's your issue, but you'll still want to get it replaced in the long run regardless. So
absolutely. And sometimes, you know, this might be the breaking point. Like you're like, okay, my machine is just ready for service, and you know, that's the thing. So you take it out and you get it. You get through your project, and then you bring it in, and we get it cleaned and serviced for you. Sometimes that's just kind of like the icing on the proverbial cake that we have going on there. But yes, we can definitely walk you through a little bit. Sometimes people get it so bent out that we can't help them, but but there are times when we can definitely help.
Possibility.
Yes. And the thing that no one ever wants to hear, your thread could be bad. So sometimes the thread is brittle. Sometimes it's a bad part of the thread. Sometimes you can spool off a yard or two of the thread and try again, and you'll get to a better part of the thread. But sometimes the thread has just become weak and brittle, and the easiest way to know this is if you try a different thread and all of your problems go away. Then we know that it's a thread problem, it's not a needle problem, it's not a machine problem, it's a thread problem. And the one thing that I hear people say all the time is, I don't want you to tell me that my thread is bad. And we aren't saying that your thread is bad because we're trying to be mean. We are saying that that is a possibility. Sometimes you get good thread, sometimes you get bad thread, sometimes thread has just aged out. I like to kind of, plastic becomes brittle with time. Cottons become brittle with time. Polyester is a man-made product, and while it is very strong, it can still become damaged from UV rays and lights and, getting moisture from the summertime, the humidity, and then dry in the wintertime with the heat. So all of those things and all of those factors can play a part in the quality of the thread that you are working with and how old it is. One of the things that you want to just pay attention to is, again, don't put a lot of time and effort into a project if the thread is not going to be stable and it's not going to support your project. So I know nobody wants to hear it, but it is true. Sometimes the thread is the problem. All right. You got anything else to say about that, Lisa?
No, you're right on the money. Nobody wants to hear it, but it's definitely something that we see issues with a lot more than people want it to be. Um, and like Sarah was saying, you don't to put all of the fabric dollars and maybe the design dollar from if it's an embroidery and all of those things that you had to invest in, and then put in cheap thread or bad thread or old thread and have your project not last because of that choice. It's just not worth it in the big picture. And an extra couple of dollars on a spool of thread, or even $1, depending upon what you're looking at, can make a big difference in what you're going to end up stitching.
We do have clearance on brothers. I know you.
Did you hear, Jeff?
Yeah. Yeah, we have some clearance thread. We're not clearing it out because it's bad. We're clearing it out because we need to make more room
Yes.
for other stuff. Jane posted and she said that her luminaire does not like sulky thread, or maybe it's those tiny spools. It's funny because
it by itself has a range of needs depending upon which one you have. So
exactly.
Some threads are finickier than other threads, brands.
Yes. Yeah. Kathy is asking, can a thread be bad from a good quality brand? And then Marge said sometimes threads and machines don't play nice. Try a different brand. So kind of all of those things kind of pertain to like my next little slide that I have up here about different types of threads. So when you get down to like the like 3/4 of the way through a spool of thread, it doesn't matter how big that spool was. The thread on the inside has been so so tightly wound that it becomes sort of squirrely, for a lack of better word. And that's when it starts to like twist and turn in your machine as it's kind of coming through, which can create all kinds of fun, unique problems. It can slide out of the tension discs. It can loop and create kind of fun loopy things on your machine. There are a couple of things that you can do to try to alleviate that. Superior Threads makes a really unique thread stand that has like 9 different ways that you can put a spool of thread, because sometimes the issue isn't the thread is maybe weaker, but the bigger issue is how many times it's twisting and it's turning in your machine, coming off of that spool, going through the needle, and then trying to make the stitch. Sometimes if we can change the direction that that's coming off of, and it's not just as simple as sometimes turning the spool from one direction and then making it, turning it upside down or flipping it on our spool holder. Sometimes it's about having the thread come, off in like a horizontal area and then feeding vertically, and different ways of changing that. And so that's what the Superior Thread stand allows you to do, change kind of the angle and the direction that the spool
is sitting. Yep.
Yes, and then is the thread going to spool off kind of and like a twist off of the side of the spool, or will it come straight up? So different ways of thinking about how the thread goes on, and how we can get it like kind of up and then back through the tension guides on our machine. Now, sometimes if I have a particular color and I'm trying to make that particular color work, it's worth it to go through basically thread gymnastics in order to make that work. Other times, the hassle of trying to get that particular spool to work is enough hassle for me to never buy that particular type again, because most manufacturers, they create their threads basically the same way. A lot of them will talk about the twist and the stack and the different ways that they're put together. The reality is they're all twisted pretty much the same. It's how the thread is manufactured the same with the same type of twist. It's how much twist was in there, and then it's how they wound it on the spool. There are only 2 ways that you can wind something on the spool. You can have it be crosswise, or you can have it be stacked. And when you look at the thread, you'll know exactly how it was, because it's either stacked on top of each other or it's kind of like a crisscross on your spool. Theoretically, you should put those types of spools on your machine differently. The thread should be vertical for something that is crosswise, and it should be horizontal for something that's stacked. If I'm not having any problem with a particular thread, I'm not necessarily going to follow that rule. I'm usually going to use my thread stand on the machine because that's the easiest thing to do. And then I'm going to thread the machine like I normally do. I'm only going to alter that if I'm having an issue.
Oops.
Hi.
Hello. Still here.
Yeah. The other thing that we sometimes can use are thread nets. We get those with our machines, and they kind of look like the stuff that you might find on produce. And you can kind of put that over top of your spool, and it kind of gives it like a gentle hug, and then helps it so that it doesn't spool off kind of as like somebody on like speed. It doesn't come flying off the thread spool, and that sometimes can help. You got anything else to add about that, Lisa?
I was just going to say the thread nets can, if you've got something that's unwinding very fast, and so you're getting it caught on the bottom of your spool, and that's causing needle issues and things like that, the thread net can prevent that from getting stuck underneath. I think we've probably all had a point in our sewing life that our tagged, and then we actually broke the needle because of the tension from the thread actually broke the needle. So, if you're running into that, you have a particular spool that likes to unwind super fast, the thread net can help with that.
Yeah. And then back to Jane's statement, which her luminaire doesn't like sulky thread, and maybe it's those tiny spools. It could be the tiny spools because they're wound very tight on those because basically the cone is so small. It also could be that sometimes, not always, sulky thread isn't always rayon. They do make some poly threads, but it also could be the type that it is. A polyester thread in embroidery is
That's good.
substantially stronger than a rayon just by nature. The rayons tend to be like really, really vivid, and they have great colors, but they're definitely not as strong.
Wow.
And then Kathy
Long is it?
says, can a
No.
thread be bad from a good quality brand? Yes, it does happen. Most of the time, not always, most of the time, if I'm gonna have a thread that gives me more grief, it tends to be a thread color that is darker. Most manufacturers do not intentionally create black thread. It's usually a misdye. So they were trying to make pink, and the pink came out the wrong shade, left it in a little too long, whatever. It didn't coat well, something. They are usually the off casts, and then they take those threads that have already been dyed once, and they put them in the black dye, and they dye them again, and they leave them in there longer to make sure that dye saturates throughout the thread and the fiber. So darker threads that have been in dye longer, they are going to be more brittle than something that hasn't sat in the dye for longer, because no matter the quality of the thread, the dye is definitely changing the characteristic of the thread. It has to basically absorb in there in order for it to change color. So the longer it's been in the dye, the weaker the thread will become. It doesn't make it stronger by doing that. So it is very possible to get a bad batch of thread from a good quality brand.
Absolutely. And sometimes you can unwind a little bit off the spool, like you were saying earlier, and it's just a section of the spool. So you can take,
Yep.
5 yards off or something, and then try again, and it magically starts to stitch better.
Yes.
And sometimes that doesn't work. But
Yes. Definitely. And one of the reasons why you might be able to just pull off the bad section is because typically a good quality brand thread uses a longer stapled when they started. So let's use a 5-yard chunk as an example. So they started out with a 5-yard chunk, and they twist that thread so that so there's 2 strands, and they twist. So the more a thread is twisted, the more shrinkage it has. So that 5-yard piece becomes, 2.5 yards now. So that means that you've got basically more strength and more thread in that 2-yard chunk or 2.5-yard chunk than you would if they use shorter strands of thread. Then what happens is it's kind of like the moving from one strand to the other, how they kind of grade them in. That tends to be kind of the weak part of the thread. It's not an exact science. It's not like here's the seam and you can definitely tell how that works, but that's basically what happens is you get the area where you're kind of joining fibers together, and that becomes sort of the weak link. So on a better quality thread, you have a better chance of getting to a better part. If that was just kind of a weird part of the fiber that they were using, whereas the inexpensive threads, part of the reasons why they can be so inexpensive is because they don't twist their thread as much. So their 5-yard piece is probably 4 yards. So it's not costing them as much money because they're not twisting it as much. The less twist that you have in the thread, the weaker the thread is by nature.
What she said.
Marge is asking, is there a true black thread, not a multi-dyed one? From my experience, there are several manufacturers out there who say that they create a not multi-dyed thread, but I have yet to have anybody actually show me photo proof of that. Like, I've never seen anyone take raw fibers and take that to the dye and show me that they're actually not doing that. So I doubt it. It's possible that at some point, you know, there are random threads because we need to fill, you know, this many, you know, we need this much black thread, and we only have, you know, 500 of them that are misdyed, but I need 1,000. It's possible that because they do that sometimes, that they can get away with saying that they don't create multi-dyed threads. But from my experience, I've never picked up a black thread, and if you compare the black thread to the white thread or the natural version of whatever that color is in any brand, they've never been the same strength. The black one has always been weaker. And I've tried a lot of thread.
I just want to say that, yeah, you have. I just want to say I totally agree with Mindy's comment. You know, we definitely invest a lot in our machines and our other materials and things, and it really isn't worth it to put junk in that's gonna jam up and because it's separating out and things. Just gonna cause more issues than it's worth saving the money of. So
definitely. And you know, there's always like a right time and a wrong time that you can get away with using maybe some thread that's not the best. You know, I have a drawer full of threads that are, you know, they're okay. And, you know, those are the threads that I use when I'm like gonna base some stuff together, or I just, you know, need some running stitches, or I'm doing, you know, I'm hemming the bottom of something and it's only gonna, you know, it's a table runner and I'm gonna repurpose this later, so it doesn't really matter. But if I am gonna put the time and the effort into a project, A, that I'm giving away, B, that I'm gonna be using in my home, or B, that I'm gonna be selling, I wanna be 100% sure that the quality that I'm giving to someone or selling to someone is going to be the very best. And in my opinion, and it's just an opinion, if you can't afford to do that, you probably should wait a little while to make that project. It's probably an unpopular opinion. But, you know, save a couple more weeks before you start your project, because in the big picture, you know, your time and your aggravation is also worth something.
Oh, most definitely.
All right. There's a lot of words here.
There are.
All right. So this is basically just a little bit of stuff that we've already kind of touched bases on. Your sewing machine needles are not indestructible. They will not last forever. The points are going to get dull. They're supposed to get dull. It's kind of like your rotary blade, your scissors, your knives, everything. You're basically, that needle is the point of contact to all of your material. It is going to dull it out. As a general rule, you should replace your needle after about 8 hours of use. I replace my needles a lot. We don't replace them near enough at the shop. But at home, when I finish a project, the very first thing that I do when I'm done with my project is I actually take the needle out of my machine and I throw it away. And I do this for two reasons. because the next time that I sit down at my machine, there is no guarantee that I'm going to be doing exactly the same thing that I was doing the last time I sat at my machine, which means the needle might not be the right needle, could be the wrong size, could be the wrong type. But this way I know that I'm starting my project with a good quality needle. If you are sewing and you can hear your needle going through your fabric, if it is making a clicking noise, you have definitely exceeded the life of that needle. It is 100% time to change the needle. The needle is the part of your machine that really makes your stitch, so it's much more important in the overall look of your stitch than you think. There are 2 numbers on your needles. It does not really matter which one you are using. If you tell us you need an 80 or you tell us you need a 12, we'll be able to determine what one that is. One of them is European and the other one is American. Ironically, neither of them really refer to American, like our math system. If you have a size 75 11 needle, it is 0.75 millimeters in diameter. That is how thick that needle is. So if you have a 90 needle, it is 0.90 millimeters. So that's how they come up with the size that you're working on. So ironically, neither of the numbers are really American, because we don't really use millimeters except for in sewing, maybe in healthcare. And so it's definitely important to change your needle and pay attention to the size, because it does matter. If we ask you what kind of needle you have in, if you're using Schmetz, and I believe Klasse has started doing this as well, they actually have like a color coding on top of that you can figure out what the needle is. You do need to have like the key card in order to know, like if there's a pink and a blue stripe on there, it's not necessarily referring to a baby boy and a baby girl. It is referring to a size and a style, but you'll need the key code in order to get that.
I think that Classes are also colored, like the packaging is color coded.
Yes. But you have to have your so you kind of, again, you need to know the key. So you have to have your package, or you have to have like the little cheat sheet from either Klasse or Schmetz in order to know what the color coding is.
What the color code means. Yep.
Yes, exactly. And I don't even try to remember them. I just look at the cheat sheet.
And if you can't figure it out, throw it away and grab a different one.
Right.
We're talking maybe $1.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah,
not worth
sewing
it.
No, it's not an inexpensive hobby. So, change your needle.
Nope, but it's legal.
Often. It is definitely legal.
It's legal.
But the cover, like Lisa was saying, it will have some information on it. So usually the package will tell you the type of needle. So if you call and I say, hey, what kind of needle are you using? And you're like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, just look at the package. It'll tell you universal, quilting, sharp, metallic, so on and so forth. And that will give us some information as the type of the point and the type of eye that it has, to figure out if that's part of what's causing your
particular issue.
Yes, your not so great stitches. And then just as a little bit of a reminder here, if you have a needle threader, and this is not a Brother or Baby Lock exclusive thing, this is kind of like a generalized statement here. You do not want to use or try to use a needle threader on a needle that is smaller than a size 75/11. So a 70, a 60, a 50, none of those. You do not want to try to use that. The hole is not going to be large enough for the little hook that is pushing your thread through or pulling your thread through to get through with the thread. So don't try that.
Right. Doesn't mean that your machine won't sew with it. It means your needle threader will not work with it and you will end up breaking it.
and then you will
And
have
then
to
you will be
come
coming to see us for a whole different reason.
Yes, you'll have to come and visit us. We're happy to have you. All right, so I
think you're going the wrong way.
I missed a slide.
Ah,
It is possible that I didn't, and I just maybe didn't put it in.
what do you want to talk about?
I don't know. I wonder what it was. I don't know. I had this up and open several times today, and then I just forgot. So, okay.
Well, what's the weather like at home?
Everybody at the shop is freezing, even though I have the temperature. I've turned the furnace on and it's at 70, but they're still freezing. So it's 54.
Ah, it was 36 when I got up this morning.
It is about that here. Yeah, it's 38.
But it's beautiful. But it's beautiful now. It's like 80 now. So
yeah.
Yeah. Did you find your slide? I was trying to fill time. Okay.
I know. Oh, I have if anybody wants to see the giant needle, let me.
This is actually really cool. I wish we had two so we could like play swords at lunch or something, but we don't.
I know, right? Let me try to find. I don't want you up anymore, but I do want. Okay, we're getting there. There we go.
That'll work.
All right. So we have this like life-size giant replica of a needle that we have here. And when I first started sewing, they did not have color coding on our needles for us. So you had to try to figure out what the tiny engraved piece on the needle was. There was a time that I could read that. I can no longer, not even with my glasses, I can't even read it. I have to take a picture with my phone and then magnify it H.
Yeah. Yeah, Tony's pretty good. He's got a magnifier back there, so he can tell you what you had in your machine most of the time.
Yeah.
But
so this is, like I said, a giant version of what your needle would look like. But there's that flat back part. And so this, when we talk about having the flat back to the back, this is the part that we're talking about. So when you're putting it on your machine, it's going towards the back. And this little rounded tip part here, which you can't really see, this is going to sound funny. This is the butt of the needle. So kind of like the joke here. That's the butt. And the butt is rounded so that when you are inserting it into your machine, it should slide into the hole. The irony about that is with the number 6 guide that we have on our sewing machines, I think it's that rounded tip part that basically creates the havoc for us. So when you don't find the hole when you're trying to change the needle, what people do is they bring the needle, so you kind of bring it up and you miss the hole, so then you move around like this looking for the hole. And when you do, it's the number 6 guide that's here. It actually gets twisted out of place, and then it shreds your threads and causes grief. So you have that. And then the back part of the needle here, this is the little groove that's in the back. And then this part up at the top here is the scarf, and then we have the eye, and then we have the point. And so this piece, this groove here, the shape of the point, and the back part, these are all of the things that change based on the type of the needle that we have and the size of the needle. So those are the things that will vary based on whether or not you have a sharp needle or a leather needle or a ballpoint needle or whatever. And why does that matter? So if we are stitching through regular cotton fabric, we want the needle to just pierce that fabric, right? Because when it pierces the fabric, it doesn't cause any harm to the fabric. It goes right in and it's very smooth, and that's what we want it to happen. If we have a blunted tip at the top, what happens when we try to stitch is that instead of the needle being able to, so if this is your fabric line, instead of being able to pierce the fabric when it makes the stitch, what happens is the rounded tip will go on one side, and then sometimes it'll go on the other side. So suddenly you have a stitch that's no longer straight. It's kind of maybe kicking to the left or kicking to the right, and that's because the tip of the needle, instead of piercing the fabric, it's picking one side of the grain of fabric versus the other, because it's not sharp enough to actually pierce through that. Now, if we pick a sharp needle and we put it on fabric that has something that can run, so a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, a sweater, or something like that, what we want to happen is we want the tip of the needle to fall on one side of the fabric, basically the grain, the fiber, one side of the other. We don't want it to pierce it, because when it pierces it, it runs. So depending on the style of material will give you the best looking stitch based on how it pierces the grain of the fabric.
Yep.
And I think that's all I have to say about needles.
Just an hour's worth. It's all good.
I think I've run out of things to say.
Well, the big picture is that they are a lot more important than a lot of us have thought at some point in our sewing life. And you definitely do actually need to change the needle.
Yes.
You know, when people call us and tell us that they're having shredding thread, and we ask them, well, when's the last time they changed their needle? And they go, well, it's the needle that came in the machine. It's probably not the best answer. So
Yeah, who knows what they put in with the machine?
Yeah,
Surprise.
you know, they're never, it doesn't matter what machine brand you buy, it's never going to be the best needle that they're doing in bulk like that. So,
Right.
Unfortunately. Nope. So, but yes, so needles and thread are very important, obviously. And Sarah did a great job talking about all the details and the whatnots. So, I don't see any other questions popping up.
No, I think we covered them all. If you have more questions, you definitely know where I'm at, and Lisa will be back next week, so then she'll be back to answering.
I don't even know where I'm at, so I'm just kidding. There are times I don't know where I am.
Yeah. Well, it's been quiet here. We've had little spurts of things, but it's weird to not, I can't like lean over and be like, "Hey, Lisa."
Lean over around the monitors and see and ask the question.
Right.
Yeah, I get that. It's funny how, out this neck of the woods, when you're in the boonies like this, there's a lot of no service. So it's like even when you've sent an email or so, I don't always get it right away.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's been a great week so far, and I look forward to being home though. So
I can't wait to hear all about it.
Got a few pictures.
Awesome.
Just a few.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I agree, Roxanne. That was really great. A lot of really good information. So a little bit of a rough start on my end, but then I actually think I stayed there most of the time.
Yeah, just a couple little frozen pictures, but overall pretty good.
Well, this picture is an angle of my face, so.
All right, guys, it's been fun. Thanks for hanging out with us about needles. And we'll be talking next week about bobbin cases and spool caps to cap off our series of maintenance on the machines. Did you like that? Cap off.
Cap, yes.
Ah.
Are we going to talk
All
about
right,
school
guys.
caps too?
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys
Bye.
next week. Bye.
Bye.
Tell you